Shubho, thank you so much for doing this. I think short notice, busy schedule, driving down for this, and I know that you've put in a lot of research into this session, which will be revealed later. Shubho is the MD of Hawkins. He's again one of those rare breed of MBAs who's in their first job. He's in their is in his campus job. He was chosen by the owner of Hawkins to lead the company. He's now MD and chairman. And chairman. And the son-in-law of the owner reports to him.
And the son.
And the son. The son-in-law and the son report to him. He's also one of the strongest value-based leaders I've met. And I'd encourage him to talk a little bit about what it means and the challenges of being a value-based organization in India. And I think Naushad will compete, but probably in terms of eclectic reading, he's the most eclectic, intense top management leader I have met. I mean, we shouldn't compete on books, but I remember having this conversation with him where he had read almost every book I spoke about, and he was able to toss out quickly two names, none of which I had heard of. So it was both humbling and interesting at that point in time. Okay, so we'll jump quickly into it. So tell us a little bit about early childhood, formative influences, role models, etc. And we'll.
So I was born in 67. My father used to work in Hindustan Motors. And he was on a strange character. He was in management, but he used to speak up for workers' rights. So after a while, the Mr. Birlas sort of pushed us into the labor colony. So I grew up in the labor colony, though my father was in management. And he was one of those emotional Bengalis. So I once remember, I must have been about 5 or 6, class 4 or 5, when I came back from school with my satchel and my bag, and my mother said, no, don't unpack your bag. Just put in some more clothes, we may have to run. So I said, why, what happened? She said, your father has gone to beat the MD with a chhatri. Now, what my father didn't realize, and I realize it today, the union was very corrupt. So they used to use him as a straightforward, honest man to create pressure on management, and then thereafter they would settle various things below the ground, which he never knew. So the workers got very little. The union leaders started building houses around the place, and my father kept being the angry young man or an old man as he was. So that's my father's side. My mother was a music teacher. In fact, B.C. Roy had this whole bee in his bonnet that a Bengali needs to. There is no Bengali or there is no Bengali culture if you don't teach them music. Now, so he put every school, primary school, you have to teach them music. But then who decides what quality control of music? All of you are in that business. You realize you can take कि हम कल से ये करेंगे. Then you have to quality control what you are doing. So he appointed some 20 odd music instructors whose job was to go from school to see that the music is being taught properly. My mother was one of them. Both of them were refugees. We were not penniless, they were both earning, but they had to keep looking after their families. So my father was from Kumilla and my mother was from Dhaka. They were refugees. They were the only sole earning members for their large families for a period of time. So the thing which changed for me was there was a nice school in Hindu Motors, and my father said you should study here, and my mother said no, my son has to study in an English medium school. They almost broke on that. They separated. They did not divorce, but they almost separated on that. My mother picked me up, went to her parents' place, and I somehow got admitted into Don Bosco, which is one of the better schools. And my father said, क्या होगा तुम्हारा बेटा अंग्रेजी सीख के क्या साहब बनेगा? I mean in Bengali. So my mother, so she was a very ziddi type of woman. Once she decides something, and very often these childhood influences, they sort of send you somewhere. The rest is not planned. Only kid, very lonely kid because my mother also had this thing that labor colony, you cannot meet with you cannot have anybody as a friend, right? I had friends, we used to play, but so she used to lock me from outside when she went, they were both working. So the only thing I could have was books. So I read all the books that were there in the house, including in Bengali marriages, when you get married, they give you books because books are cheap as a gift, right? And they give you slightly, not pornography, but slightly books which have some sex in them, some stories and all that, because you're getting married. So those were also there. So I read everything that there was. That started my reading habit.
How do you think each of your parents has shaped values, just looking back?
See, the influences are quite a few, but primarily, in all these things, you sort of catch one brand value type of a thing. Or maybe I'll give you two aspects. My father's straightforwardness, is absolutely honest and absolutely straightforward. He used to be in accounts, and he was in time office. And Hindustan Motors had this lovely industrial culture, which meant that from 8 o'clock to 4 o'clock, nobody worked. And from 3:30 onwards, people will start working so that they could get overtime. I don't have overtime in Hawkins, not a single hour, because I know the overtime system. So then they would come to my father, so he had to clear the overtime system. इसके लिए इतना आदमी, इसके लिए इतना आदमी. And he used to say no. So then pressure would come from seniors and seniors and seniors, because this thing, once you get into it, it goes all up the chain. Even the factory manager, let's say whoever is the general manager running the factory, he doesn't want a union or labor issue in his hand. He says, नहीं साहब, दत्ता साहब, आप 2 घंटा लिख दो, वो ठीक है, 4 घंटा मांग रहे हैं, आप 2 घंटा लिख दो. So it's very straightforward. And also the other thing which I got from him was, he was very good with numbers. He used to look at a piece of paper. उस ज़माने में computer नहीं था, whatever number of hours overtime. 6, 9, at that speed. So I know my tables.
What Bengali is called namta.
Which Bengali is called namta.
This is all that.
21
21 into 16 is this, 21 into 17 is.
Yeah. I mean, till 25, I'll probably be able to get it all right. So the numeracy comes from him. I wish the music came from my mother. I'm completely besura. She once, so there's a story. So I used to bug her कि मुझे गाना सिखाओ and all that. So she said, अच्छा ठीक अच्छा ऐटा खाता नहीं आए, means get a notebook. And some Ravindra Sangeet, I don't remember which one it was. She said, Lake, wrote it. And she tried to teach me. After a while, she said, Kachkar, from the next page, you start doing maths. So that was the end of my singing. But I've got my zid from her. She was very ziddy. If she set heart on anything, she would not give up. The implementation, you know, I mean, I have been a CEO in Hawkins for now 2006, almost 18 years. Implementation is a bitch. So that I've got from my mother. She used to be very dogged. If she said she'll do something, she would get it done. My father was more of a poet and idealist, that sort of a thing.
So the book started in what age of?
5, 6?
And continued at that pace?
No. So what happened was, after I finished reading all the books there were, we couldn't buy too many books. There was a library, but we didn't have time to do. So for a period of time, I actually had to read textbooks because I had nothing to read. It was very boring the way textbooks used to be written during our times. वही पढ़ते थे. So what used to happen is, summer holiday I used to be desperate कि school का next class का the whole books should come. And then, many of the textbooks, they don't teach you, like say if there are 25 chapters, they will teach you 11, say 15 chapters. And then they'll say, this is not in the syllabus, this is not in the syllabus. I was very attracted कि वो पूरा पढ़ेंगे. So I used to get the books, and out of boredom, I used to read textbooks very happily. I know, like हमारा poem shoem की जो था panorama, I used to know all the poems. From that panorama, they would have maybe about 50 poems. Or in class, they will teach you 12 or 15. I used to read all 50. And then a very interesting thing used to happen in Cal. There used to come a ship with books called Lagos. It was a ship which used to move around from place to place with books. So we used to go there, and I couldn't afford, my parents couldn't afford much. So जो भी pocket money, वो सब बचा बुचू के, we used to go and buy as many books. Tell me why, tell me how, the standard encyclopedia thing. I used to buy that. Tintins were very expensive. So I had one Tintin which I used to barter and get other Tintins for. Unfortunately, I chose one which young boys didn't like. It didn't have too much excitement. Those of you who are Tintin fans, it's called the Castifoyer Emerald. ठीक है, उसमें ज़्यादा एक्शन नहीं है, वो कट्स द बुचर ही चलते रहता है. So that was it. And then the Calcutta book fair used to happen. But the book fair, one used to just go around and see so many books. Couldn't buy many, but... And then an interesting thing happened as I got into, say, by that time I was class 9, 10, and we had a little bit more money. There was in Calcutta a street called Free School Street. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. Okay, now they have called it, I think, Mirza Ghalib Sarani. Free School Street was famous for two things: old second-hand books and prostitutes. So if you walk down that street, at every block you would find a bookshop, and in every block you would find either a prostitute or a tout, rickshaw wala or something who's... तो हम छोटे थे, हमें उतना कॉस्ट नहीं होते थे, but Free School Street was a great thing for me. And my beginning of reading non-fiction starts at Free School Street. And it starts very funnily. I must be 14, 15 or something. Hormones are raging. So I find this book called The Naked Ape. And उधर क्या है कि दुकानदार के सामने खड़े होकर ज़्यादा naked ape देख भी नहीं सकते. So I couldn't read what was inside. So I got it for 3 rupees, 4 rupees or whatever. How many of you have read The Naked Ape? Desmond Morris.
Partha, of course.
Okay. So, Naked Ape, I came home and I started, and I got very disappointed. Right? And this is a book, The Naked Ape is a book written by a anthropologist, if you like, who looks at human beings as if we are animals. Like, if you are writing a book on tigers, what will you say? That a tiger is a nocturnal animal, raat ko jagta hai, they eat this, eat that. Try doing it on a human being. Don't worry about, whether I'm educated or not. Just treat me as a animal. That, I found that very fascinating.
It's a good book.
I found that very fascinating. And Desmond Morris, of course, if you go back, he's a very, very interesting guy. I would recommend, if those of you are interested in religion, no, acha, wo Desmond Morris nahi, Robin Dunbar hai. But even Desmond Morris has a book. Desmond Morris has a brilliant book on surrealist art. Kahan se? He's an anthropologist. It's a beautiful book on art and how the anthropology of art. For example, the first thing he says is that, if you look at tribal art and all that, the size of the head is much bigger than the relation to the body. So in a lot of art, you focus on certain aspects and you exaggerate it. And that, that gives it focus. It's got 7-8 principles. That started my non-fiction reading, at least.
So I'm going to fast forward this a bit. Let's go past IIT Kharagpur and IIM Calcutta and say, join.
But don't go too fast, otherwise I won't get married.
Okay, so let's go IIT Kharagpur, IIM Calcutta, marriage and Hawkins. And you take us through that part, and then we'll go into the Hawkins journey.
No, so I was a reasonably good student.
And you read the chapters that were not prescribed, so that doesn't hurt.
So I should have done much better in IIT. I had an All India, some 500, 600 rank. I had expected I would be in the top 100. That got spoiled because I came first in Calcutta in ICSC. And it went to my head, and I said that I became philosophical. So I started reading lots of books on philosophy, religion, and all that. So you can't do that and prepare for IIT and all that. Hua nahi. Na religion hua, na IIT utna acha hua. But IIT, I decided I'm not going to study. I had by that time figured out you can, in a college or this thing, you can do 2 of 3 things. I've never seen a person do extracurriculars, acads, and have friends in any college. Proper good friends. I've never seen a person do all 3. So you have to choose 2. So I chose 2, the friends and the extracurriculars part. So somehow passed, then fell under the eyes of these strict, but IIM Cal also somehow used to, manage to pass. So my advantage was I didn't have a problem with a CGPA of 5 or something like that. I didn't have confidence issues that, oh my God, CGPA is 5. My wife, or would be, current wife, and at that time, so she had a CGPA of 8 or 9. Then she met me in IIM Calcutta, and her CGPA went down to about 6 or 7. So I've never had a good influence on her. So we fell in love and all of that. And she's a Punjabi, and I am a Bong. And her father said, oh. Anyway, so for 1 year we had to sort of
2 states too.
2 states, and then so I got married. I came to so IIM Cal, they had this first day jobs and all. So there were all these banks. I was not interested in the banks, but Sonia said no, you have to. So anyway, I went to Greenlays. They had a group discussion. So they said the topic was Mahatma Gandhi should not be called the father of the nation. Okay? You know MBA group discussion, सब कोई बोलता है. So I said it's correct, and we Bengalis have certain issues with Gandhi anyway. So after a while, I had almost convinced 3 or 4 people out of a 12-person GD. Ki, हाँ, Gandhi not necessarily the father of the nation types. And of course, I mean, we didn't go into those sort of things that how many, if he is the father of the nation, how many kids he can father and all that. वो अलग चीज था. So I thought I had a brilliant GD. Greenleys, I think out of a group of 12, chose 10. And they didn't choose me for the final interview. So Sonia joined Greenleys. And when she started working there, I realized that Greenleys mein main ghusta tha. It was a very good decision they didn't take me. Both for me and for them. They don't want people to rock the boat too much. So Hawkins was a third-day job or something. So I had that. During our batch, we had a big advantage that the top-paying job was about $9,000 and the bottom-paying job was about $6,000 a month. So there was not a bit, so you could enjoy yourself. In 1992, thanks to Manmohan Singh, McKinsey came into the campus.
Your batch? No.
My batch. Ours was the first batch. And these boys came and told me, hey, do you know McKinsey is paying 1 lakh? So I said, 9 into 12, 1 lakh. हाँ, Greenleys के time पे ही होगा. He said, नहीं, 1 lakh per month. Huh? 1 lakh per month. We couldn't imagine it. So, after that, the nature of the campus changed. So, we were one of those last people.
Nature of MBA education in India changed after the MBA, the consultants and the investment banks.
Yeah.
Goldman also did the same thing.
Yes.
So the whole learning thing just got completely
Because
destroyed.
if your option is between 9 and 6, you might as well enjoy yourself, read whatever you want. But when it becomes like that, it becomes quite a big decision. So I joined Hawkins. I joined Hawkins. उसका भी कारण ये था कि the owner's father, the father's daughter was my classmate. She was, I wasn't very friendly with her, but I knew her. So the father had come to give a talk. It was not a pre-placement talk, just a talk. And you see, I don't know, you guys, I hope you don't work for many builder companies. My father was a union leader in a builder company. So I had clearly understood that no business can be run ethically. It was quite clear. Right? So, when Mr. Vasudeva came and he talked about ethically running businesses and all that, then, ठीक है, बोलने के लिए है. But anyway, I said, at least बोल तो रहा है. You know. So I joined Hawkins. And at a princely sum of, I think, 9,000, 8,000, जो भी था. As a management trainee, 18th of May 1992. And the 13th of June 1992, I was sent to Patna as a salesman. It was the first flight I had ever taken. So anyway, selling was a big challenge for me. I was one of those, Bengalis who cannot ask for anything. You can't ask anybody for a favor. Even poor Sonia had to sort of hint to me that, we might as well get married types. मैं खुद कभी नहीं पूछूंगा types. So when you go into sales to ask for so it was difficult, struggled, all of that. Then Hawkins went into a bit of a problem. We started doing badly. I was in sales at that time after a small stint in marketing. So by that time I was a head of a zone, large zone, north zone. And it's very economically beneficial to me. I'll tell you why.
Mm.
I can go into any Bombay auto and they never charge me 1 rupee extra or a taxi. Because as soon as I get in, I ask, where are you from?
Mm.
They will say Bihar. Then I ask, Bihar mein kidhar? They will say, they'll give a small glance and then they will say, whatever,
Darbhanga, something.
Muzaffarpur.
Huh.
And I'll say, Muzaffarpur mein kidhar? By that time, the guy almost stopped, right? He doesn't know anybody. So he says, sir, वो जो दरभंगा जाता है ना, तो दरभंगा वाला जो बाएं वाली रोड है या दाहिने वाली रोड है? साहब आप गए हैं? That's it. 11, whatever, 111 rupees. If I give him 150 also, he'll give me back 39 rupees, like that. So, small town India worked in. Then, so he offered that you can be the head of marketing or the head of sales. I said sales.
Mm.
So I said, marketing is much more interesting. I said, sales.
This the owner offered you.
This is the owner who. अच्छा, Hawkins का थोड़ा सा background देना पड़ेगा. It's a refugee company from Lahore, the other side. The Punjabis, they came here. So the owner's father, Vasudeva, Haridat Vasudeva, was a serial entrepreneur. He had a shop in Lahore. He used to sell radios. He had some insurance, this thing. So when they came to India, they had really nothing. So he kept starting companies. ये वो और हाथ पैर मार रहे थे. In 1959, at an age of 56, he started Hawkins Cookers Limited. And that was because he was in insurance. He had gone to London and he's met this guy called L.G. Hawkins. Hawkins is an English brand. And the guy said, why don't you sell pressure cookers in India? So Mr. Vasudeva said, no. India, people are not educated. It's a pressure vessel. If it bursts, I don't want people's, they won't follow instructions. They can't read instructions. So this L.G. Hawkins told him, why don't you check, you're from insurance, why don't you check the claims on our product for the last 10 years? Your friends will tell you. So there was a product insurance. So he found there were no claims.
No claims.
I said, okay, I'll try. So then they went there, learnt it, came to India, 59, made the first pressure cooker. To complete that story, L.G. Hawkins passed away. His kids were not interested in the business, so they sold the business to Echo Polke company tha, who sold it to another company. Eventually, in the 70s, mid-70s, Hawkins as a brand was owned by Philips of Eindhoven. So then, Philips was not interested in pressure cookers. So this Indian company went to Philips and said, why don't you sell us the brand rights all over the world? And that they did, I think, for 20,000 pounds or something thereabout, small amount of money. And then this company, Indian company now, owned by the Vasudeva family, 56%. So Haridat's son, Brahm, who was my boss, again a professional manager, used to work in Hindustan Lever, then Unilever. Studied in Oxford, worked for Unilever. He's actually the guy who launched surf in India. So those of you, if you read old surf stories, he was actually the guy who launched surf in India. Doing very well, and he was promoted, fast-tracked, all of that in Unilever. Then his mother was dying of cancer. So she asked him, how long will the old man carry on alone? So this guy said 3 months. So I What do you mean 3 months? He said, that's my notice period. So he gave Levers 3 months notice, came and joined the family business in 1968. I was 1 year old. He brought in a lot of professionalism from Levers into Hawkins. Product demonstration, वो सर्फ का वो, they used to have this balti where they used to, this thing, all of that came into Hawkins. We used to cook pulao and feed, we still do actually. The CNFA system came into Hawkins. Previously, we used to have a soul selling agent called Killick Nixon. So, all of that professionalism, Levers ka more or less control C, control V. And then he said, we'll get professional managers. वो खुद professional था, उसका वो चस्का था. So then Hawkins had started advertising, ये वो and all that. So I'm one of those professional managers. Now back to this sales versus marketing story. So he said, why don't you do sales? So I said, no, I want to do sales. So he said, anyway, did marketing. This is about 2001. Took us 3 years, but we turned it around. And it was difficult because Brahm Vasudeva used to think that and he was actually, a great marketing genius. So, उसके ऊपर कोई बोलता नहीं था. तो मैं झगड़ा करता था उसके साथ कि, he used to like designing so much that he would not do television advertising. Because press ad, you can change every design, you can make this better, you can dot the I's and cross the T's, right? He used to love doing that. And I felt we should, and we didn't have enough money to do both mediums. So I said, you should do television. He said, no, this is, and we had a system, we used to first go and tell the dealer, if you buy so many pieces, your name will come in the press ad. So he says, what will happen to those sales if I stop press ad? I said, no, if you can create demand, the dealer will obviously buy. So we fought for about 1 or 2 years. And then he said, okay. And the company turned around after 2 years of losses and all that. Not necessarily just because of that, various things.
But it's a big call. From press to
TV.
Was a big call.
Was a big call. And Brahm Vasudeva is a very strong advertising professional. He is the guy who started MRUC, Media Research Users Council. He is the founding chairman of ISA, in Society of Advertisers. And this thing which is now on news quite a bit, ASCII, the code of ASCII is written by Brahm Vasudeva. He was the hardcore old-time marketeer. Jason Dakuna was on our board, all of these people. Alec Padamsi. They are the last of the English advertisers. You see, newspapers advertising in English, most ads were written in English, translated into Hindi. And then the Prasoon Joshis and the Piyush Pandays came from the hinterland, and in television, language would go to people who could not read. And that changed Indian advertising up. Some of you are from Pidilite and all. Actually, that is what changed Indian advertising into the form that you see now. And of course, I won't get into digital and all that. So he was that old club. So then after, by 97, his son had joined. He was used to work in Reckitt and Coleman at that time. He worked from XLRI. He worked for about 3-4 years, joined Hawkins in 97. And I don't think at that time he was necessarily directly reporting to me. I think he was looking after one zone, I was looking after one zone. Anyway, I came to marketing, this happened. And then he had a board, so he told the board, so he decided at 70 he is going to step down from CEO, which happened in 2006. So he told the board who should be the next CEO. And there were these guys who were much older than me. There was a guy heading accounts and a guy heading operations who have been, I was 39, these guys would have been about 49, 50, and had been board members for about 8, 9 years. The board, those guys interviewed us, and they had the
And they
gut.
interviewed the son also.
No.
No.
The father said, once he proves himself, he'll come to the board. He hasn't yet proved himself. That was the end of the son at that point. The board chose me. It was a very brave decision. I had just been 2 or 3 years. I was part of the board in 2004. And then the son is a very nice guy and a very good fellow. But the father was clear that if I want to run the company professionally, the best person should go. And I mean, he's on the board now, but and he's been absolutely a gentleman. And
The son, you're
the
talking.
son. You know, imagine this in the Indian environment, to face that, and with all sorts of societal expectations, is actually a much stronger or a more difficult decision than the father's.
Even within the family, it can be challenging.
He is the biggest shareholder today. He has about 15-16% of Hawkins. So, वो ब्रह्मवासुदेवा ने मुझे सिखाया है कि once you decide I will do this, really speaking, the corollaries that follow, even if you don't like them, you have to accept them. If you decide that I will be a good quality product, now tomorrow the raw material prices goes up, day after tomorrow something else happens, but once you have decided you'll be a good quality product, you cannot compromise. Whatever is the cost, you have to do it. If it hurts your profit, it hurts your profit. So that he was that type of a man. So, and then he passed away in 2000. And then again the board had to choose a chairman. So they chose. That's the
Quite
whole
a story.
Hawkins story.
It's quite a story. I'm going to move a little forward because we want to get to reading also. Tell us a little bit about the values that you spoke about at the beginning, Brahma Vasudeva's values, and how it played out in terms of your own statement that can a company be ethical in India? So, little bit about what you've experienced, what works, what doesn't work.
So I'll start with a very story. As a young boy, MBA किया हुआ है. 93 we have this conference in Goa, and all salespeople are there, and there are some posters design of products, and each salesman has to go and rate the poster more or less as awful, okay, good, excellent, that sort of a 4 scale. So क्या हुआ कि you have to write in below. So then I think some poster, 3 people gave it awful. So now everybody knew that chairman Brahma Vasudeva is the marketing genius. And somehow in the conversation it came out that he has designed that poster. So then he asked, who are the people who have given it awful? कोई नहीं खड़ा होता. So then he said that, I will not. I mean, after quite a bit of this thing, I think one guy got up and he said, okay, I'll promote you, or some rubbish like that. Nobody else stands up. So lunch ho gaya. And he says, I'm not taking any further part of this meeting. If you guys can't speak the truth, kahani khatam. So then in lunchtime, I was a young boy. I said, sir, sorry. Uske pehle, the head of marketing started a campaign saying, sir, what was happened was that awful wala part, it was written a little to this side. So what they meant is okay, and by mistake, they ticked in awful. Actually, it was not awful. That is why they are not standing. So they are very good, honest citizens. आप मत जाओ. So वो मुझे खराब लगा. So I caught him in lunch and I said, sir, नहीं, awful लिखा था, वो ऐसा कुछ नहीं था. There was no way we could be confused. It was very clear. So, and then when I started working with him, I figured out सही में fully ethical है. Actually fully ethical. मतलब, So, he was not a foolish guy. Say, for example, Hawkins, if you read our stuff, we used to pay very high dividends. We used to pay almost 70-80% of our profits as dividends. And he would pay tax on that. But he would not charge any personal expense on the company. Kadapi nahi. He would not take any extra benefits from the company. So when he stopped being an executive, this thing, so we used to pay for his driver and car because he was an advisor, and that is it. So he was completely ethical, and that's what I learned from him. Actually, you can't be ethical just in money. Then you end up, he was completely ethical as the product is concerned. You don't compromise on the product. Then you become completely ethical as far as your transactions are concerned. We still, we run a huge dealer network. We still print a circular copy and we send it to 15,000 different addresses in India. Scheme is in writing. If the salesman tells you anything wrong, salesman क्या बोलता है? Suppose the guy has to do 20 lakhs for his target, he'll calculate and he'll tell him 25 because उसको 5 lakh extra चाहिए. So if you are a Hawkins dealer in your app, your balance to target will come out clearly. No salesman can give you a wrong story. So that was the general approach. Once you are ethical, but it started with with his father. So when Hawkins went public in I think 77 or something, it was a 10 rupee share, and I think they wanted a 10 rupee premium. The guy who was to set, in those days there was a comptroller who was to set the premium. The guy asked for 3 pressure cookers. So Mr. Vasudeva said no. So when it came back to him for the final the premium was cut down from 10 to 2.5. So 7.5 rupees on, say the family owns 56, so about on say 30 lakh shares, he lost a few crores there. In those days, it was 1977. And that has continued now. I mean, I had a criminal case against me.
Yeah, I was Googling and there's in
Even,
jail for 6 months or something.
Yeah, even now, if you Google, so that Hawkins CEO sentenced to 6 months, it comes up front page. I haven't done enough notorious things to move it beyond that. The kids nowadays do that. Now, if they find something wrong coming up, they somehow get into the news so that pushes down. So there was this inspector who, Factories Act, in the Factories Act, if you have a hospital which is 200 meters from the precincts of the factory, you don't need to keep an ambulance room. So this guy wanted, this time inflation hota hai, he wanted 12 pressure cookers. So those guys told him that, no sir, you have to tell head office. So usko bhaga diya. So usne, and Later we found out that there is a bigger thing to it. Other industries in that area was showing us as an example and reducing their takes. So this guy,
So they had to make an example
they
of
had to
you.
make an example. So then they did all of that, and and then I was a bit of a novice. So in the magistrate's court, they called me. So I went and I said the truth, whatever it was. You don't need to, because there was this thing. Here are the measurements. The magistrate said, "Okay, I will pronounce my verdict tomorrow." And बोल के छोड़ दिया. So I should have realized that what he's meaning is you come and meet me tonight. So the next day he sentenced me to 6 months of imprisonment. And then we had to scramble and get an appeal, bail and all that. I didn't have to go to jail, but for about 1 hour there was a policeman who was sitting very close to me till I got the bail. And then this is another Hawkins training. I got this fat file of all documents and we went through it. There were 3 or 4 of us. And then we realized, uske pehle lawyer ko diya hua tha. And then we figured out that the date on which this guy says he inspected the factory and he found this thing was a holiday. In Punjab, Wednesdays are holidays. So गलती से उसने इंस्पेक्शन का दिन वेडनेसडे में डाल दिया था, किया नहीं था ना इंस्पेक्शन. So it was a holiday. So then we said, okay, chalo, ab it goes to the sessions court then. So we'll fight in the sessions court. You come into the picture now because this IIM alumni, Vinny Mahajan, was the Secretary of Industries in Punjab. And I found out because she got a distinguished alumnus award. So then I reached out to her. So she said, come and meet me. I said, this is the matter, told her the story. She said, what? It will be set in 2 weeks' time. Sorry. 2 week ka 4 week ho gaya, 4 week ka 2 mahina ho gaya. Then I had to reach back to her saying, what happened? She says, come. I went in. She said, the whole department is against you. It is very difficult for me to do anything. So anyway, we went and met the minister. So the minister says, I know you guys won't give anything. So I said, yes, sir, you know rightly. So he says, अच्छा ऐसा करो, employment दे दो हमारे कुछ लोगों को. I said, वो दे सकता है, पर हमारा एक written test है. वो written test पास करेगा तो हम दे सकता है. Written test, mostly his people never passed. But anyway, we won the case fair and square thereafter, with the department also being pushed not to take it. So this continues, and it is a. But there are ways of doing it. There are 2 or 3 benefits. It's not I don't think it's just ethics for ethics' sake. Benefit, I'll tell you. When excise was there, our trucks were never stopped. Every other company's trucks were stopped at the gate. If you are not a low-hanging fruit, if they know it takes you a lot of effort to get anything out of you, they don't trouble you. You imagine yourself as a corrupt fellow. Why do you want to go and bang your head against Hawkins? Kuch to milega nahi, and it will be 30 hours of making reports and studying the act and all that. So it's not just it's a practical approach. And if you haven't done anything, don't.
This is true for many companies, I think, that if you are able to build that ethical reputation, and I think, I'm sure there are examples in this room. Naushad will have his own stories.
Yes, it works.
So, I'm going to quickly cut. There are 2 broad themes. One is you're talking about courage of convictions. Second, you're talking about being straightforward. Can you now talk a little bit about how your reading has evolved and what role reading, leading and leadership for you? What role does it play? And then after this, we'll let the audience in.
Okay. You know, actually, I never read because I wanted to be a leader or anything like that. You read because you are curious. You read because you get itches in your head. How is this happening? And if you read fiction because you want to know where it is going. So, people, if you start reading to build your career, I'm not so sure it works very well. You pick up certain catchphrases. There is a catchphrase reading which happens also, which is, what is the latest thing going? Okay, deep learning. So, you know, it'll, people will start saying, in my morning walk when I go, I am now doing deep learning. कुछ connection नहीं है. But there are catchwords you have to do, inclusiveness and all that. So, diversity,
DEI.
DEI. So, I was never interested in that sort of reading. So, but the interesting thing was that once I started reading diversely, very often a lot of that comes back and helps you in your work. Quite a few, I'll give you rough, broad examples. You read about history. History is the best example of leadership that is there anywhere. And you read about Saladin. Now that man Saladin never lost a battle. Right? और किससे strategy सीखना चाहते हो? You read about, so there is a lovely book called, I think, The Decline of the Mughal Empire, by a guy called Jodunath Sarkar. Very few Indian history books are written like that. This is a very detailed thing. You read that book, you don't have to read anything else on logistics in India. When you are fighting a war, logistics is the most important thing. And he will tell you how this river crossing, this is the problem, how roads were like that, how depending on the season, armies will have to move and all that. So, you start out of curiosity and then you end up connecting a lot of it to your own life and work and all of that. And of course, reading influences your personality completely. I'll tell you, appraisals of Hawkins people has improved, matlab their ratings have improved last 3 years because of a shlok that I read. So there's this shlok says, shlok bolo, jo bhi bolo. Amantram akshara nasti, nasti moolam anaushadam, ayogya purusha nasti, yoggastatra durlava. Any one of you familiar with this? Okay. But Hindi jante ho na, I'll break it up. Amantram akshara nasti. There is, akshar is letter, nasti means no. Amantram, mantra is, there is no letter which cannot be used in a mantra. Amantram akshara nasti. Nasti moolam anaushadam. Aushad is medicine. Mool is roots of a plant. There is no root of a plant which is not used in some medicine or the other. So, nasti moolam anaushadam. Ayogya purusha nasti. There is no man who is completely useless. Yoggas tatra durlava. The guy who puts the man to the right use, he is rare. Durlava. तो उसके चलते बेचारे लोग का अप्रेजल सही हो गया, बिकॉज आई ब्लेम माई सेल्फ दैट ओ दिस गाय इज नॉट परफॉर्मिंग, आई हैव नॉट डन माई वर्क प्रॉपरली. So these, what you read comes back to you and it really impacts you. And what I mean is, there are two forms of reading. One is technical reading. There's one of the book I'm reading is an AI basically, which is you figure out kya ho raha hai, kya nahi ho raha hai. And the other is completely off the cuff reading, which gives you insights which you don't even store. What you find very surprising, it stays with you actually.
Yeah, yeah.
And then many years later, suddenly it will come to you because वो store हो गया है. And so once you read actually a lot of rubbish. So it's only the sharp thoughts or the unusual thoughts that stays with you. That comes in useful because you have internalized it. You don't have to necessarily scratch your head when you're taking a decision. वो आपको influence कर देगा. Like I gave you this shlok ka example. It's not that before every appraisal I chant it and I do the appraisal, but it's changed my behavior.
No, what I find, for instance, often when people ask me questions, a book will come out as the answer because it's a line from a book that is triggered by a question. And okay, so I think thank you for your patience. I deliberately went down certain roads and we spent a long time talking to each other because I thought both the value side was fascinating as well as the book side is fascinating. So thank you so much, Shubhodip. I think it's close to 9 o'clock. I don't think we felt the time, and I think that's the best certificate we can give at the end.
Thank you.
I think it was a pleasure. So thank you. Final round of applause.
Thank you.